I'd now like to introduce our next keynote speaker, Ms. Livia Castellanos, Executive Lead, International Education and Jurisdictional Initiatives with the Ministry of Advanced Education in the province of Saskatchewan. She's here to speak about moving forward a provincial approach to international education. With over 20 years of experience in the field of international education, Livia Castellanos is currently on secondment from the University of Regina, where she serves as the Associate Vice President International to the Government of Saskatchewan Ministry of Advanced Education. In her role as the Executive Lead for International Education and Jurisdictional Initiatives, Ms. Castellanos focuses on elevating Saskatchewan's profile on a global front by championing the important work required to reinforce the Saskatchewan Growth Plan priorities. With this new portfolio, her primary responsibilities are policy related to international education, both in the provincial advanced education sector and from a national and global perspective, excuse me, advancing Saskatchewan study abroad efforts, including re-attracting students back to Saskatchewan with global competencies to support population labor force targets, articulation of provincial positioning on federal-provincial relations with respect to international education, international partnerships, and the Council of Ministers of Education Canada, and to lead policy development and implementation processes on the ministry's Francophone affairs. Fellow PAW attendees, I present to you Ms. Livia Castellanos.
Thank you very much, Jay, and thank you everyone for joining me today. Thank you to my colleagues at the University of Saskatchewan. A heartfelt thank you to my colleague, Meghna Ramaswamy, for inviting me today. I am very excited to speak to you about how are we trying to move forward international education in Saskatchewan. I'm not going to take much of your time, but I hope that you enjoy this presentation. So we all know that the pandemic became a big crisis globally, and that we had to shift gears and change to respond to this pandemic. And sometimes we see it as a big crisis, but I think also it was a fantastic opportunity. And as we all know, post-secondary institutions really were forced to change from face-to-face delivery to an online model. And it was in a very short period of time. However, I don't think everything was bad about this. COVID-19 presented great opportunities for collaboration, great opportunities for changing and thinking differently about not only education, but international education. It has really allowed us to innovate in different ways that we never thought about it. It allowed international students to live abroad, to be with their families while they were actually studying in our institutions. That is a very important shift and a paramount move for international education, not only in Canada, but also at the provincial level. Also, what it sparks for me was allow the provinces and territories of this country to have a voice with the federal government, to have a bigger voice, to actually elevate the issues of international education at a national level. We all know that a lot of the policies related to international education are really the responsibility of the federal government. But as provinces and territories, and as the ones who work day to day with our colleagues in different institutions, we needed to really upscale our game and talk to them and bring forward the issues that our provinces and territories are facing right now with international education. In Saskatchewan, to be very, very honest, COVID-19 really made the government stop, pause, and reconsider how to work in international education. The idea of the government before I joined them was to have a cohesive and seamless approach to international education. And COVID-19 has been the perfect opportunity to really showcase the work that we can all do collaborative across the province. One of the initiatives was for the government to create this new branch to support post-secondary institutions in internationalization. The branch was designed under the principles of creating an equitable and inclusive sector. The branch roles is to facilitate, orchestrate, and also provide paramount service to the sector, to all our institutions. Through this branch, the government collaborates with all of the institutions in Saskatchewan who receive international students, and we share best practices so that we can present Saskatchewan and our institutions as a package. This new approach really allow our institutions to demonstrate that rather than competing against each other, we can really work complementary with each other. And we can really position Saskatchewan as a destination for the students, but also showcase what we can do as a province together in areas of research, student services, student recruitment. And those conversations that have been going on really have inspired all of us to think differently about how we can move forward during the pandemic, but also after the pandemic. The work of the tables, part of the work that we're trying to do is really the establishment of several tables, provincial tables that talk about aspects of international education that are very precise. We have a strategy table where all our leaders meet and talk about issues of policy, issues of operation, issues of delivery that we need to tackle so that we can continue to remain current in international education. Then we have an international student services table, and I value those tables so much because, for example, at the international student services table, we talk about things that impact international students and how we can serve them better and how we can have an approach that is seamless. So it doesn't matter where the students go, if it goes to Saskatoon or Regina or Moose Jaw, that they have the same quality of service and the same support that they require during this pandemic and beyond. We also have an international recruitment table, and we have been able to really position Saskatchewan in very different avenues, promoting the competitive advantage that we have as a province. We are small in population. We are not necessarily a desirable province to come for international students, but I think that we do have very special programs, wonderful institutions like the University of Saskatchewan with amazing research that will be able, if we unite and promote Saskatchewan as a destination, we can actually position it that way. So we have reached out to so many people in the world in this short period of time, and we're very, very proud of that. Also, we have worked a lot with our student mobility table, and you might think, well, what mobility, right? We're in the middle of a pandemic, nobody can travel, students cannot leave Canada and so on, but we are actually investigating and seeing about how we can have a study abroad program that it is a virtual study abroad program, and other institutions from Saskatchewan are doing that, like the University of Regina, and we're trying to bring to the table to our practitioners and our colleagues from across Saskatchewan a study abroad hub where everybody has opportunities to mobilize either virtually or physically when we can. So these are some of the examples that we have. Recently, we have created a new table that is chaired by the University of Saskatchewan, that is the research and sustainability table, where we are trying to unify all the research strengths of Saskatchewan so that we can partner internationally and meet the needs of some of our colleagues across the world, but also some of the key UN goals. So all of those things have really been transformational for our institutions. They have been transformational as well for the government. I think that a system of this nature has never been seen, and the way that we are orchestrating and incorporating the knowledge of everybody. So some of the successes that we have had, I think I mentioned them, but I think one of the successes that we are most proud of is really the quarantine centers. I don't know if you guys know, but the government of Canada stipulated a policy for all foreign travelers, that includes international students, to come to Canada and to do a 14-day quarantine. So some of the institutions in Saskatchewan, they don't have residences. So the University of Regina right now is offering their resident services to many regional colleges across the province to really support them so that they can receive also international students. We're also delivering agent recruitment training through the Canadian Bureau of International Education. I think these are some of the examples. We recruit together, as I mentioned. We promote Saskatchewan together. It's amazing to see how all the institutions support each other. in the promotion of each other and in the celebration really of what they offer. And that unity demonstrates a very, very strong sector, which I am most proud of it because I belong to that as well. So one of the things that I love about what we are doing is really that community that we have formed. That community and those friendships, I think, are very important. So when you're working with people from across the province, I think that not only we benefit from positioning Saskatchewan to the world, attracting more students, having more information available so that we can talk to the federal government about the needs and priorities of Saskatchewan. But I think the most important thing is the positive approach of uniting people to really resolve very, very acute problems that we have in international education. I think Saskatchewan is absolutely well positioned to ensure the sustainability of international education in a global environment that is uncertain. As we know, many countries in the world right now are trying to figure out how to attract and retain international students in the midst of this pandemic, where the students are not really getting the experience of living and breathing in Canada and in Saskatchewan. So we're trying our best. I think that the policies that have been implemented by the federal government have been very positive so far in terms of the postgraduate work permit and working and studying from abroad. So for me, I think that in the coming months, we're going to be embarking on the new strategy for the future of Saskatchewan international education. And I am counting with all our colleagues from across the province to really assist the government and help us in really directing or helping us to direct the future of this important part of international education. Our sector and international students will play such an important role for the recovery of the economy for COVID-19. Saskatchewan needs young people. We need not only to attract them, but we need to keep them. They can build happy lives with families here, and we are most proud to be part of this new approach. Just in closing, what I wanted to mention as well is that this approach, it seems like is working very well for us. And I have been invited to other provinces now to go and speak about the approach of international education in Saskatchewan. I think that often people are afraid to work with other colleagues because they believe they are perhaps competing with one another for students in the world. But I think that if we work all together, we have a much better chance to be able not only to attract, but to retain students and to give a very different experience to our Saskatchewan students who can now or will experience the world from their classroom or virtually from their homes here in the province. Thank you so much, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Livia. That was fantastic. And now we'll move into the question and answer period for the audience to ask their questions. As a reminder, the chat will be turned on for you to pose any questions. During the Q&A, please be sure to select everyone as the recipient in the drop-down menu. And while people are typing in their questions, why don't I get you started, Livia, with the following question. How is the province of Saskatchewan, particularly, how are our higher education institutions working collaboratively and in solidarity towards advancing the UN Sustainable Development Goals?
Yes, thank you so much for that question. We have created a table that is our SGD table, and I think that table have met only once and is chaired by Dr. Mekna. But I think that table will be able to really gather all the research that is done in other institutions and across Saskatchewan so that we can tackle some of those issues that are global issues. I think that as a province and as a group of institutions, it is a responsibility. So I was very, very excited when Mekna brought this to our attention. And I think that with that in mind, also forward Saskatchewan as a destination, not only for students, but for research, as we are planning to collaborate and to partner with other countries in the world, right, for these, to meet these goals. So I will say that that is what we're doing. We are at the very initial stages, but we have already a 1-year working plan that we're going to be executing. So it is my hope that maybe sometime from now I can report on that progress.
Excellent. I'm having a little trouble on my own here navigating the chat. So while I figure that out, let me ask you another question. COVID-19 has taught us about new opportunities. In light of expanding international education, many are thinking about the possibility of developing new virtual programming to connect with our international students. What are the opportunities and the challenges that you see in this?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that that COVID-19 has given the wonderful opportunity to think differently about international education and maybe deliver some of the programs abroad. However, with that, I think the challenges not only will be for the students, but it will be for the institutions and for the province as a whole. For the students, because they will not have the hands-on interaction and the people-to-people relationships with other colleagues here in Canada or in Saskatchewan. They might lack the campus experience and the Saskatchewan and Canada experience. Another challenge that I think is that when students come from their home country and they utilize their postgraduate work permit, perhaps they will not have the necessary tools to enter into the labor force and the labor market with the experience of that it is living in communities in Canada or in Saskatchewan. I think that will create a problem, and I am forecasting that. I don't really know if this is going to happen or not, but as an international student myself who came to Canada 20-some years ago, I could tell you that if I study online and then I landed here and they asked me, here is your visa to work, let's get you to work, it will be much more challenging for me than if I was here as a student and maybe experiencing life here prior to that.
Just as an aside, I don't know if you are familiar, Livia, with the role we're trying to play here at the university in helping coordinate Canadian progress towards SDG number 6, the water SDG. So we run a big program called the Global Water Futures Program, and as part of which we just call GWF. And as part of GWF, in fact, one of our speakers yesterday may have talked about this, Professor Corin Schuster-Wallace, is leading an effort to try to, sort of synthesize what's happening across the country, at least on the water SDG. Can you give us an example of a state or a province, institution that you see you might think is a model for successful international education?
Well, I mean, I think that there are institutions out there who do a lot of wonderful work in international education. The University of Alberta, in my opinion, is one of the institutions that I believe has really wonderful approaches to international education because they do it in a very organic way. They really combine all aspects of international education under one umbrella, and they are as well a U15 as well as the University of Saskatchewan. So I will recommend looking into that. They look at many different angles of the same thing, which really brings the research forward, but in combination with international students who are graduate students, in combination with practicums abroad for undergraduate students, and all of that is really incorporated into different topics that are driven by researchers and by operational staff. So I think that will be my answer for that question.
Thank you. Okay, so there's a question from the audience, and someone wants to know what happens if faculty don't want to buy into international education. How do you handle that?
That's a very good point. That's a very good question, and it's something that I have faced in my prior positions. Not only I was at the University of Regina, but I work at the University of Alberta and at the University of Winnipeg. And sometimes it is a constant. Faculty members sometimes are not buying into international education. I think that my recommendation is to be persistent, to show the value of international education, and to show also how international education can enhance the experience of the faculty member within the campus. I think it's really, really important to mention that, because by enhancing that experience in the campus or abroad for that professor, I think it will really transform his view or her view about international education.
Another question. Thank you for an excellent overview. What specific initiatives is the province considering to start hybrid teaching opportunities with international partners, such as 2-year plus 2-year degree programs, to extend the reach of Saskatchewan educational institutions?
I think the plans that we have as a ministry here is to really facilitate relations, government to government, with other countries that will allow our institutions to be able to reach out to more institutions and more students and solidify our name abroad. By facilitating that, I do believe that institutions will be able to deliver better and more programs abroad. I think when it comes to the program, it is really the purview of the institution. And when it comes to the facilitation and the orchestration at the government level, it is really the responsibility of our ministry. So we are trying to form relationships and formal partnerships with other governments from across the world to put Saskatchewan on the map, so that when our institutions decide to open up and have more partners to deliver programs, we can have the support of those foreign governments so that we can do it in a more orchestrated and in a seamless manner.
So there's a question in the chat that my interpretation of it is, have you seen new kind of opportunities emerge because of the pandemic? And how might those impact your perspective and opportunities moving forward?
Yeah, I think the first opportunity that I see is that international education and immigration will be the recovery of COVID-19 for Canada, each province and each territory. And that is not to say that we are focusing only in economics and we're focusing on money. What I interpret by that is that international education has become top mind for a lot of very powerful people in this country, whether it is associations, organizations, government officials, the Prime Minister. International education is playing a role, and now people are thinking and talking about international education. So I think that this is creating an opportunity for international education no longer to be siloed in one corner of the life of this country, but to fully integrate as a vibrant part of attracting new people here.
I agree. We talk about this all the time. So I'm the director of the Global Institute for Water Security here at USask, and all of our faculty members are interested in recruiting graduate students, and of course we're getting, like everyone else, we're getting our degree programs online. I think that of course we're delivering them all online, but there's a huge challenge now for us. In the province, but really everyone faces the same challenge, is that now that everything is online, now that everything is widely available, how is it that you distinguish yourselves? So those are conversations that we're having. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that in terms of how you distinguish yourself as an institution, I think is with the quality of your program, of course, right? With the ranking that you have, with the type of research that you do. I think that that's for me, from an institution perspective, that's what I believe. I think how you position yourself as a province, I think, is offering retention programs for the students that are attractive and that are viable and feasible, so that students are willing and wanting to not only come but stay. I know that in future months, there will be perhaps a new program to retain students to Saskatchewan. That will be a very competitive program. So all of those things and the policies of the federal government. So I see it almost like a cascade. So you have the federal government making big policy changes to support international students, but also to support the name of Canada abroad, because the Canadian government is often thinking about their competitors. So what is UK offering? What is Australia offering? And what are we offering as a country? What is the value proposition? So that will be the first one. The second thing, I think it will be the provincial approach. What are we offering as a province? What kind of policies do we have, not only to retain students, but to support them while they are really here as students? And that is the cohesive approach and the seamless approach to international education. And what I hope that the tables will serve by actually closing those gaps of knowledge among our colleagues, the practitioners of international education in the province. And the third one is really, how is the universities and the colleges going to set themselves apart with the quality of the programs and the quality of research and teaching that they have to offer international students.
Looks like we have at least one more question. How can international educators in Saskatchewan play a role in addressing SDGs when working with global partners? Do you see a role for the government of Saskatchewan here as well?
I think that educators play a key role on meeting the SDG goals, for sure, by doing what they are doing and by researching what they are researching and teaching people and focusing also on global issues and global partnerships. And I think that as a government, the role here is really to facilitate and to break any kind of barriers that our institutions might face, so that we can enhance their work, because the institutions is really where the expertise is, and the government is just the frame, right? Just to assist, to help and facilitate, rather than to create barriers for our institutions. That's how I see it. And maybe it's just my own point of view, but I believe in that completely.
Well, I think that will do it. Thanks very much. Dr. Livia Castellanos, has been a great discussion. We really appreciate your participation.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It was really invigorating to chat with all of you. So thank you so much for your time.